So it's now time for all ages, and as you might have guessed, it's a musical selection with the participation of the children's choir and the UUG choir. So kids, you want to come up, Jessica? We have some percussion instruments for the children. All the children are most welcome to come up if they would like. If they wouldn't, that's fine. Okay? You can find the words on your lyric sheet, so they might not be the words you're used to for this song, okay? Before we sing, I want to share a few thoughts on this song selection. Woody Guthrie is credited with writing This Land Is Your Land in 1940 as a response to the 1938 version of God Bless America, written by Irving Berlin. The melody is based on a Carter family song, however, recorded in 1934, called When the World Is on Fire. An earlier version of the song is found in a 1928 book published by white scholar Newman Ivy White from Duke University in a book called American Negro Folk Songs. Guthrie wrote several different versions, and the ones that we have become popularized as the alternative patriotic song, which an old friend of mine learned in his first grade classroom, Catholic classroom, are not the only lyrics. The 3 verses that we will sing today are not often included in the sing-along canon. And finally, this is something to think about. This land is your land has been viewed by some indigenous individuals and groups as an expression of colonial oppression and, quote, erasure for indigenous people and their culture. Cree singer and songwriter Buffy St. Marie refused to sing the song with Pete Seeger in 1966. Jennifer Lopez included several verses at Joe Biden's inauguration in 2020. Many First Nation people criticized her song selection. Mali Obumsawin, who is an Odanak Abenaki First Nation activist and musician with the band Lula Wiles, said, "In the time that we're in, I think that a lot of people are trying to break through the bubble of white ignorance," she says. In the context of America, a nation-state built by settler colonialism, Woody Guthrie's protest anthem exemplifies the particular blind spot that Americans have in regard to natives. American patriotism erases us, even if it comes in the form of a leftist protest song. Why? Because this land was our land. It became apparent to me that what we might think of as a simple song, protest or patriotic, often has very complex layers. Keeping that in mind, we'll change the course on the very last verse of This Land Is Your Land to This Land Was Made for All of Us. Okay, when I say sing, hit it, but not yet. Sing, this land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking, this land is your land, from California, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. stream water. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. In the rear office, I seen my people as they stood there hungry. I stood there asking, is land made for you and me? This land is your land, this land is my land. To the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream water. Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for all of us. This land was made for all of us. Once more, once more. This land was made for all of us. Oh, beautiful.
And now, an excerpt from narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, 1845. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery in 1818 in Talbot County, Maryland. He escaped from slavery in 1838, making his way north, where he became the most influential leader of the abolitionist movement and a supporter of suffrage for all Americans. He was a great orator and author, and he chronicled his life as an enslaved person in the best-selling book, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, which was published in 1845. This is an excerpt from chapter 2 of that book, as he writes about the songs he heard as a child. The songs told a tale of woe, which was then altogether beyond my feeble comprehension. They were tones loud, long, and deep. They breathed the prayers and complaint of souls boiling over with the bitterest anguish. Every tone was a testimony against slavery and a prayer to God for deliverance from chains. The hearing of those wild notes always depressed my spirit and filled me with ineffable sadness. I have frequently found myself in tears while hearing them. The mere recurrence to those songs, even now, afflicts me. And while I'm writing these lines, an expression of feeling has already found its way down my cheek. To those songs, I trace my first glimmering conception of the dehumanizing character of slavery. I can never get rid of that conception. Those songs still follow me. To deepen my hatred of slavery and quicken my sympathies for my brethren in bonds. If anyone wishes to be impressed with the soul-killing effects of slavery, let him go to Colonel Lloyd's plantation and, on allowance day, place himself in the deep pine woods, and there let him, in silence, analyze the sounds that shall pass through the chambers of his soul. And if he's not thus impressed, it will only be because there is no flesh in his obdurate heart. I have often been utterly astonished since I came to the North to find persons who could speak of the singing among slaves as evidence of their contentment and happiness. It is impossible to conceive of a greater mistake. Slaves sing most when they are most unhappy. The songs of the slave represent the sorrows of his heart, and he is relieved by them only as an aching heart is relieved by its tears. At least, such is my experience. I have often sung to drown my sorrow, but seldom to express my happiness. Crying for joy and singing for joy were alike uncommon to me while in the jaws of slavery. The singing of a man cast away upon a desolate island might be as appropriately considered as evidence of contentment and happiness as the singing of a slave. The songs of the one and of the other are prompted by the same emotion. I have sometimes thought that the mere hearing of those songs would do more to impress some minds with the horrible character of slavery than the reading of whole volumes of philosophy could do.
Thank you, Jessica. And thank you for letting me speak to you today. We might go over a little over, I'm sorry about that. So if you have to leave, no worries, okay? So our homily is going to be two parts, speech and then a song, okay? Just to give you a little warning. So as I worked to prepare the songs and words for today, I learned so much about so very many things that I thought I already knew about, including Frederick Douglass. Another thing I learned a lot more about was the Bible story of Paul and Silas. Roman soldiers arrested them for preaching the words of the Galilean known as Jesus of Nazareth, and they placed them in a dungeon with other so-called criminals. The story goes that one began to pray and the other began to sing. Did the other prisoners sing? I'd like to think so. The next thing you know, there was an earthquake that loosened the chains and broke down the prison walls. Freedom ensued. That pesky word freedom kept popping up everywhere I looked in my research. Freedom from what? Freedom from prison chains, freedom from the, quote, peculiar institution known as slavery, freedom from war, freedom from hunger, freedom from poverty. We could make a very long list here. Now let's flip the script. Freedom to. Freedom to worship as you choose. Freedom to write what you believe without injury or repercussion. Freedom to love who you will. Freedom to gather together to express your beliefs. Freedom to make healthcare decisions about your own body. Freedom to move freely about in your own country. Thinking about freedom can be a beautiful pastime. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked a lot about freedom, and he talked about its opposite, oppression. He had a deep respect for music as an instrument of change. In a piece he wrote for the 1964 Berlin Jazz Festival, King had this to say about the role of music. Quote, God has wrought many things out of oppression. He has and thank you, Martin Luther King, for letting me speak your words. He has endowed his creatures with the capacity to create, and from this capacity has flowed the sweet songs of sorrow and joy that have allowed man to cope with his environment in many different situations. Jazz speaks for life. The blues tell the story of life's difficulties. And if you think for a moment, you will realize that they take the hardest realities of life and put them into music, only to come out with some new hope or sense of triumph. This is triumphant music. Modern jazz has continued in this tradition, singing the songs of a more complicated urban existence. When life itself offers no order and meaning, the musician creates an order and meaning from the sounds of the earth which flow through his instrument. It is no wonder that so much of the search for identity among American Negroes was championed by jazz musicians. Long before the modern essayists and scholars wrote of racial identity as a problem for a multiracial world, musicians were returning to their roots to affirm that which was stirring within their souls. Much of the power of our freedom movement in the United States has come from this music. It has strengthened us with its sweet rhythms when courage began to fail. It has calmed us with its rich harmonies when spirits were down. And now, jazz is exported to the world. For in the particular struggle of the Negro in America, there is something akin to the universal struggle of modern man. Everybody has the blues. Everybody longs for meaning. Everybody needs to love and be loved. Everybody needs to clap hands and be happy. Everybody longs for faith. In music, especially this broad category called jazz, there is a stepping stone towards all of these. End quote. Okay, here's my full disclosure. I am no expert in music as protest. But as I began to study this topic, I learned what a grand living monument music everywhere has been and continues to be in the struggles of the people throughout history, in endless battles to combat the greedy warlord, the oppressor, the predator, the slave catcher, the landed gentry, the royalty, the patriarchy, and the tyrant. As I delved deeper into this complex and universal web, Dr. King's description of music as a stepping stone toward love and meaning gave me a foothold. And music as a stepping stone toward freedom in all its forms, this is a concept I can get behind. The songs we share and sing with one another are based on our human stories. Telling our own human stories and looking at our own lives and the stepping stones we take toward a more equitable and just world can be a very humbling experience. But I'm stepping out into the deep water to share some of my stepping stones on this journey, long journey called life. I don't see Julie here today. She was amazing last week. If you didn't hear her, she became vulnerable in our sight and she inspired me. Although I have lived in many different places, I began my journey at Mercy Hospital in Baltimore, in the same year that the Baltimore Orioles were born. It was a good year. I lived in Westminster for the first part of my childhood, where my father worked on a dairy farm and my mother looked after the 6 girls born to my parents. I attended St. John's Catholic School, and we went to Mass every Sunday. One of my early memories was walking on the sidewalk with my mother in Westminster and passing several young black children about my age. I was puzzled, as I had not seen any black children before, and I wondered why. I've been cursed with an incessant curiosity all my life, and I pestered my mother to tell me why these children weren't in my school and where they lived and why I hadn't seen them before. I don't remember the details of her answer, but I do remember thinking it was a woefully inadequate one. Another early memory in Westminster was asking my mother about a racial slur someone had written in the dust on the back window of a school bus. I repeated the word to her, asking its meaning, and I will never forget the ferocity of her reaction. I had never seen that word before. I did not realize the impossibly deep heaviness of speaking that word out loud. I thought my mother was going to slap me, but she impressed upon me that this is a bad, ugly, dangerous word that I should never let pass my lips. She didn't really explain why. I had to turn over that particular rock on my own to see those dark creatures scuttle away. My family moved several times, and I found myself at Severna Park High School in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, in the middle of my freshman year. I had a difficult time fitting in, coming from a highly academic girls' parochial school in northern New Jersey. Let me share a statistic with you. In 1850, 5 years after Frederick Douglass's book was published, enslaved persons made up the bulk of workers on plantations in southern Maryland. 5 counties, Anne Arundel, Calvert, Charles, Prince George's, and Montgomery, were home to 50,000 whites, 9,500 free blacks, and more than 48,000 enslaved persons. I learned that statistic while researching this service. A small light bulb opened up for me around my adolescent confusion as to why the black students in my school were not part of my academic track with its accelerated classes in math, science, and English. I left the East Coast when I was 20. I've enjoyed living in different parts of the United States, and I spent 10 years living in New Zealand, where I still have family. Many stepping stones later, I want to fast forward you to recent events in Wellington, New Zealand. Many of you may have seen the recent media coverage, including the front page of the New York Times, of the haka performed in the New Zealand Parliament on November 14th. A haka is a ceremonial chant usually performed by Maori, the indigenous Polynesian people who have inhabited New Zealand since the 1300s. It has been made most famous by the performances of the New Zealand All Black rugby team. The youngest member in Parliament, Hana Rawiti Maiapi Clark, began the protests by ripping up a copy of a bill introduced to, quote, redefine the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, a document from 1840 signed by the British Crown and 500 Maori chiefs, thank you, to guarantee the rights of Maori as indigenous people of Aotearoa, the Maori name for New Zealand. As you might have guessed, the word redefining is a code for rolling back the expansions of rights and privileges afforded to the Maori people. Elsewhere in the world, another stubborn form of musical protest showed that it is very much alive and well in the European Parliament. On October 9th, after a speech by Viktor Orban, Hungary's right-wing president, left-wing members broke out into song, singing the anti-fascist Italian anthem, Bella Ciao. Although the song has been more lately associated as the opening theme of a popular Netflix show, Bella Ciao is another song with deep roots to oppressed people, namely the female rice weeders from northern Italy in the late 19th century. The melody stayed the same, but the words were changed in the 20th century to inspire partisans of the Italian resistance of World War II. That song is, gosh, if you do some research on it, it's probably been sung in every country in the world, I think. All right. So we'll be running a clip of that during the offertory. But before we do that, I am going to prepare your voices to help me join again in singing a song that I wrote several years ago. We've heard from many people instrumental in the struggle for equality and freedom, but before we start, there's one word I want you to remember, because you probably won't remember a lot of words, right? Because I've said a lot of words. I'm a little too loquacious, I think, but there you are. The number I want you to remember is 246. That number represents the official number of years that people were enslaved in the United States of America, from 1619 to 1865, 246 years. If you look at the legislative history of Mississippi, the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution abolishing slavery was not fully ratified and sent to the National Archives, which is the final step to make it real, happened in 2013. It happened in 2013, and the only reason it happened was because an academic who saw the movie Lincoln was inspired to do some research and figured out that those documents had never been carried over to where they needed to go. The Mississippi legislature just conveniently forgot to send those documents. So it's not 246 years. You can do the math. I'm not sure I can. Nearly 400. Also, just one more little piece about 1619. So it depends on who tells the history. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures based in Washington, D.C., they say, quote, the year 1619 was pivotal in the establishment of the first permanent English colony in North America. Along with the first representative legislative assembly in the New World, 1619 marked the arrival of the first recorded Africans to English North America, the recruitment of English women in significant numbers, the first official English Thanksgiving in North America, and the entrepreneurial and innovative spirit of the Virginia colony. So read the subtext, check the facts, check the facts, check the facts. That entrepreneurial and innovative spirit found among the English colonists in the New World included trading 20 Angolans, captured prisoners, for food. Oppression comes in many disguises. The Ku Klux Klan robes, men in masks, women in masks, signs that say colored only or no Irish need apply. It is often accompanied by music and anthems, every bit as stirring as the Maori haka. Oppression in these outward expressions is easy to discern. It is the more overt forms of oppression, like the Mississippi legislators, the members of the NCSL forgetting their own Virginia state history. These are the things that we must continually guard against and call out. It is often difficult to confront the past, whether it is our own past mistakes and miscolorations of the truth, or that of our country or countries. Maya Angelou's poem on the pulse of mourning, read at the 1993 inauguration of Barack Obama, holds these lines. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Before we sing, let me close with these words from the Equal Justice Initiative based in Montgomery, Alabama. America's history of racial inequality continues to haunt us. Many of the issues we face today are shadowed by an underlying narrative of racial difference and bias that compromise our progress. Our nation, now more than ever, is in desperate need of an era of truth and justice. We must first tell the truth about our past before we can overcome it. Thank you for letting me share my words today. And now, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you if you would like to stand, because I think you might want to stand up and move around a little bit, and while I get ready to play the guitar and teach you my song, okay? All right. The song is called Inside Your Skin. It's on your lyric sheets. If I forget the words, well, what the hell, right? Help me out. I'll sing the chorus, so-called chorus, and then you guys can sing it with me, okay? And then we'll go through the whole thing, okay? Sound good, Betty? Awesome, okay. To see how you feel, to be alive, to be real. Let me walk 100 miles inside your skin. Open up your heart, don't see the world so far apart. You can walk 100 miles inside my skin. Okay, you guys want to try it? Okay. To see how you feel, to be alive, to be real. Let me walk 100 miles inside your skin. Open up your heart, don't see the world so far apart. You can walk 100 miles inside my skin. Just a child, I learned to find the line that divided our town, Westminster. Brown from white, like day and night, there was no meeting ground. Sing. To see how you feel, to be alive, to be real. Let me walk 100 miles inside your skin. Open up your heart, don't see the world so far apart. You can walk 100 miles inside my skin. At age 16, I met a boy with skin so different from mine. Our friendship grew, and the world we knew became cruel instead of kind. I left that town with a broken heart. Around the world I did roam. Many years have gone by, I still wonder why people could hate us so. Sing to see how you feel, to be alive, to be real. Let me walk 100 miles inside your skin. Open up your heart, don't see the world so far apart. You can walk 100 miles inside my skin. All children know the simple truth. We are all just one. Deep in Africa's heart, where the world got its start, the human race was born. Deep in Africa's heart, where the world got its start, the human race was born. Last one. To see how you feel, to be alive, to be real. Let me walk 100 miles inside your skin. Open up your heart, don't see the world so far apart. You can walk 100 miles inside my skin. Thank you, everyone.